people just assume, as I stated, that the Bible has a negative stance on sex. The reality is that's not the case. The Bible is not taboo on that subject. In reality, the Bible has a very positive view of marital intimacy. You might know this already, but there's an entire book in the Old Testament called the Song of Songs that is essentially erotic love poetry. Some of you are thinking, it's been a while since I read that book. I'm going to go check it out later today. And I don't say that to shock you. I just want to demonstrate that the Bible isn't anti-sex any more than the Bible is anti-food or anti-creation. It's when we take God's good gifts and use them in selfish and evil ways that God is against us. And that's what this passage says here. Let marriage be undefiled, for God will judge the sexually immoral and adulterous. The first thing we see here is that sex, according to the Bible, is sacred. The word defiled is a really interesting word for this pastor to use. It's usually used in the context of the temple and the temple worship. The objects of the temple, the holy objects of the temple could be defiled. The holy people of God could be defiled through corruption and sin. So in using this word in particular, the pastor is depicting what happens between the husband and the wife as something sacred, something which should not be corrupted. And just contrast that with how our broader culture often treats this subject. It's a joke, sort of crassly. It isn't something sacred, but something common. We're flippant about it. It isn't the Bible that has a low view of sex. It's the world. Christians actually, when we think about it, what the Bible teaches, actually the Bible teaches Christians should have the highest view of sex and marriage because they're viewed here as sacred, as gifts from God. So sex is something that's sacred, this text is indicating to us, but it's also something that is selfless. God promises here to judge the sexually immoral and adulterous. And the question a lot of people today have is, why does God care about who a person is with or what a person does privately? And the reason is quite simple. And I think this is what we need to say to that. Sex, almost more than anything else, is often used not to love others, but to objectify them. If you asked most sane people today, what do you think about slavery and racism? They would say, well, they're horrible. Well, why are they horrible? Well, they're horrible because they dehumanize people. They don't treat people with the value and the dignity that they deserve. They're terrible. And people in society don't realize how that's happening all the time in our culture and celebrated with things like sex when we hate it, when we talk about it in the context of things like racism and slavery. For all the same reasons that God hates racism and slavery, he hates sexual immorality. Sexual sin objectifies people, whether it's on TV or a computer screen or in real life. It treats others as objects for our gratification rather than precious image bearers of God who should be respected and dignified.